Everybody, welcome into DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. Of course, I always call it a podcast, but when we are here on video, we're not exactly a podcast. We are happy to have your comments. We hope you'll check out the podcast edition of DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, a bit later on. I recorded a fun conversation with Connor Riley. You can hear that. One of the things that Connor and I kind of got into was the cover for video that we did on Thursday with Jeff Sintel, DawgNation Recruiting Insider, Mike Griffith, obviously as well from DawgNation.com. We drafted all the players thus far from the Kirby Smart era. It ended up being kind of a nice nostalgic conversation, looking back on some of the great memories thus far for Georgia during the Smart years. So I hope you'll check out the video. The good news is it's on both Facebook and YouTube, so you can find easy access to that. And before I get into more of what's going to happen with us on video here, I will also tell you that we have a really fun thing coming up on the DawgNation video channels here on this Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time on both Facebook and YouTube. I'm really lucky to be a part of this with Jeff Sintel as we welcome in former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm and former Georgia left tackle Andrew Thomas to look back on their Georgia careers. You know, years ago, we had a big event called DawgNation Appreciation. We brought together some UGA greats to look back on a tremendous season for Georgia. And today, it's sort of a virtual version of DawgNation Appreciation with both Fromm and Thomas. So we're looking forward to doing that at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And really, I hope you'll be there live to be a part of it. In fact, you put a question in the comment section for either of those two guys, you may get your own question answered here today from both Jake and Andrew. That's coming up at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That means we'll probably get off the air just a little bit early to kind of give some space for that show to begin. Of course, everybody who's working on that, getting that kind of taken care of there as well. Let me tell you about more of what's going to be on the podcast today. Then we'll kind of dive in here and we'll start getting some of your comments. So one of the things I reference on today's edition of DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger is a pretty interesting piece by Chip Patterson at CBSSports.com, where Chip looks at all of the transfer quarterbacks and their potential impact on the college football playoff. And right there at the top of his list in terms of the potential premier impact is what Jamie Newman has a chance to do at Georgia. And he says some very nice things about that. We'll talk more about that coming up on today's edition of the podcast. But also I'm going to take this in the direction of also something that Georgia coach Kirby Smart said when he made an Atlanta radio appearance going back to Thursday, that no matter what expectations exist for Newman, no matter how much of the success that Georgia has offensively this year kind of depends on Newman, Kirby Smart's still going to attempt to have a quarterback competition, the way we've always kind of come to expect that from UGA, from all of its position groups. Georgia apparently still planning on trying to do that at the quarterback spot this year. But I think the question that has to be asked about that is, and frankly, some of you may not like my answer, but it's still a fair question nonetheless. The question that has to be asked by that is, can you really have a legitimate competition featuring multiple potential starting quarterbacks, splitting reps amongst all those guys, if you're also dealing with a shortened practice period before the start of the upcoming season? I think logistically that's very difficult to do, although I understand why Smart is paying lip service to that idea. So we'll get more into that on today's edition of DawgNation Daily. We'll also talk a little bit more about Elijah Jeudy, the four-star edge rusher for the 2021 class, who has now let it be known that on Sunday he's going to make his college announcement. If you read the piece from earlier in March that Jeff Sintel wrote about Elijah Jeudy, who hails from Philadelphia, the same city that's produced DeAndre Swift and Mark Webb, the connection that Philly has with UGA is something that's impressed Elijah Jeudy. And Jeudy himself seemingly feels pretty good about the Dogs. Does that mean he chooses Georgia on Sunday? Well, I'm not going to get into the prediction business on that. But 4 p.m., which I believe the time that Jeudy says he's slated to make his announcement, this is definitely one worth watching. So a lot on today's podcast, DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger, on Elijah Jeudy, his upcoming announcement on Sunday, and on the role that quarterback competition will play in getting the Georgia offense ready for the upcoming season. That's a big part of the podcast here later on today. And of course, it's all presented by our friends at Kroger. And I want to tell you about something really fun that our folks at Kroger are doing here right now. Because, listen, we're all spending more time at supermarkets than we're used to spending. And Kroger's done such a good job of kind of keeping this place clean and keeping everything working really well. And now they're going to let you take the next step towards making a very positive impact on the world which we live in. It's the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation that Kroger's been a big part of for a long time. You get a chance to make a donation to that right now. So that means that when you check out at Kroger, you can round your purchase up to the nearest dollar, or you can make a donation of $1, $5, or $10 increments there at the check lanes. And you can get ready to really contribute to a great organization that Kroger's been a massive part of for a long time, the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation, through our friends at Kroger. Make sure you support that when you're buying your groceries here at Kroger over the course of the next couple of days. Just another way in which our friends at Kroger are making a positive impact on the communities in which we all live. So huge thanks to Kroger on that front. With that in mind, let's go ahead and get some of your comments on both Facebook and YouTube. And I had somebody reach out to me on Facebook yesterday. I had a few people probably reached out to me about this on the subject of how we handle ourselves on Facebook. I'm going to be very candid for a moment. We have two very different comment sections. Now, Twitter is kind of its own world. Let me just deal with Facebook and YouTube here for a moment. The YouTube people like calling each other names. They like going back and forth. Half of them that watch the show live, I think that's what they come for. They want the kind of combative style. The Facebook does not want that. Okay, so one thing we're not going to do is we're going to be a little different how we handle the Facebook comment section compared to how we handle the YouTube comment section. YouTube people, they want to fight, they want to argue, that's what they want to do, and frankly, who am I to stand in the way of that? But y'all, on the Facebook side of things, where it's a lot more, I guess, is it congenial? Is it a word? A lot more just sort of people just kind of get along with each other a lot more. They enjoy the camaraderie over there. Don't be calling names on Facebook. We're not going to be doing that. Don't be picking fights on Facebook. If you want to pick a fight, go over there to the YouTube comment section. But you better buckle your chin strap if you want to do that, because they get after it over there. Facebook doesn't want that kind of stuff. Y'all don't be calling names and stuff over on Facebook. So that's my I guess it's my PSA here as we get ready to go. Al Chandler says he hasn't been on the show for a while. Yeah, I look pretty different if you haven't been on the show for a while. I think, in fact, I think our buddy Michael Carvel has an example of just how different I do look compared to really not all that long ago. So if you're checking in for the first time, I've been kind of growing a beard throughout our coronavirus shutdown here, just kind of something to kind of keep me entertained and sort of give people a chance to see something different. Al kind of compares me to ZZ Top, Duck Dynasty, things like that. Listen, I'll take all of those as compliments, really. So not too bad all the way around. You'll also notice that my hair's wet today. I just got out of the shower. So I guess that's one of the benefits of working from home. You can hop out of the shower and walk right over here and sit there. Yeah, look how different I look. I'm seeing the show on delay on my phone. Going back to the Rose Bowl in 2017 compared to how I look now, very, very different. Very, very different all the way around. So some of y'all saw that a moment ago, but I'm just kind of seeing that on delay on my Facebook comment section. I'll get a few more Facebook comments. We'll go over and get some YouTube stuff there as well. No live guest on this show today. I did record an interview with Connor Riley, who's going to be a part of our podcast, but live guest in a big way coming up later on today, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, when we get a chance to talk to Jake Fromm and Andrew Thomas. Really looking forward to a chance to do that. Mary E. Justice says, happy Friday, stay positive. I love that idea on a Friday. Mary, I appreciate you bringing that in here. William and Elaine Morgan says, this could be the season the Dogs win the national championship. You better believe that I view that as a very legitimate possibility. And I kind of references in the show, the podcast version of our show, a little earlier this week. It's really fun to be a Georgia fan talking to Georgia fans in an era like this, because we all know that for every season, this one included, now this one's a little different than the others because there's so much about the upcoming season that we don't know. But when it comes to what are realistic possibilities for the year, Georgia fans are really lucky that the sky can be the limit for the last few years and really for as many years as you can kind of see into the foreseeable future. Now, obviously, at a certain point in time, there's an impatience and a restlessness that kind of creeps in there. Georgia fans, want to see their team kind of pay off on that and actually finish that drill. And I do get all of that. But if you look around the rest of the country, the landscape of college football, there have never been few teams that start the year with a chance to win the national championship. For the most part, even within the Power Five, those major conference programs that play at this level, even those programs, for the most part, just have very little chance in some cases of winning the national championship. If you're not recruiting big-time players, if you're not spending big-time bucks, if you're not playing the game at the highest level, you just don't have as much of a chance. Georgia's really lucky in the fact that he can say that it's in that group. So while you wait for Georgia to kind of fulfill that potential and actually win that championship, at least appreciate the fact that Georgia is on the very short list of teams that start the year viewing that as a realistic possibility. I think that's a pretty good point from our commenter there. Let me pop over here to the YouTube side of things here for a moment. We'll take some YouTube comments, and good to see what's going on here. Green Soldier, thank you so much for not kind words and being a part of our show. As he says, he's ending his work day. Actually, I'm on the wrong show. So we did a cover 4 yesterday, and when I pulled up YouTube, I was on the comment section for the show we finished yesterday. Let me see if I can get out. Let me see if I can get back over here to the Let me do this again to get on the YouTube side of things here for a moment. Y'all give me just 1 second. I'll get up and running on YouTube and get some of your comments going on there here on DawgNation Daily on a Friday. So looking forward to taking some of those YouTube comments. And as I said before, for a lot of for a lot of people watching the YouTube comment section, they kind of love going back and forth. They love the arguments and the fighting and the wrestling matches over there. So I'm sure they're doing some of that kind of stuff right now. In fact, I think we already see some of that kind of stuff. Memphis Dog says, I'm traveling back in time. Yeah, I was looking at yesterday's comment section for our cover 4 when I first popped over here to YouTube. So there you go. Football fan says, I look better with the beard. Keep it. Well, if football fan's giving a compliment about anything, I must be doing pretty good, because football fan doesn't typically throw a lot of compliments anybody's way. Jay Shipe says, I'm looking like Arn Anderson. Yeah, I guess with the slick hair, I kind of do. The slick hair is not necessarily on purpose. I've just been trying to get 1,000 things done this morning. I had to record the podcast early, so I was late getting the shower, and so I had a little bit of a wet hair look. That's not necessarily on purpose, but I'll take a comparison to the Enforcer any day of the week. George Herndon says, "Get your mind right, BA." Yeah, listen, you got to do that for sure. Like Dog 1968, also kind of some complimentary stuff. Chase White on the differences in the YouTube comment section, the Facebook comment section. I guess I never really thought about this until recently, but they really are so different in terms of just kind of what's tolerated. Now, I kind of joke around with the YouTube people about sometimes it's hard for me to find comments to read because they're so busy sniping back and forth to each other. But the truth is, they don't even get mad when I say that, because as I said before, for the people who watch the show on YouTube, and listen, the overwhelming majority of the people, like 95% of the people who watch these shows, don't watch them live to begin with. People watch them late. They treat them like a video version of a podcast. That's like 90-something% of our audience does not connect with the show live. But for the people who do connect with the show live, there's a very different experience that's been cultivated on the YouTube side of things in comparison to what we had here on Facebook. And that's kind of the way both sides kind of want that. Football fan says it's true about him not giving compliments. He says you got to earn those compliments. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Silent Chaos, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Also, he said, I took my advice with the WD-40. That's pretty funny all the way around. Yeah, so good stuff kind of coming here in the YouTube comment section. Let's see what else is going on here. Stephen Vendanzi says, any plans to turn into the virtual G-Day tomorrow? Looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what Kirby Smart tweets. And, the thing with Kirby is, and I thought he said something kind of interesting about this when he was on the radio in Atlanta. And I put a link to that radio interview when I posted the podcast yesterday. They were asking him hey, how detailed are you going to get with some of your comments? And he said, if I get too detailed from a schematic standpoint, he says it's going to go over the head of a lot of my audience. It's probably true. It's also probably true that Smart does not necessarily like to be all that forthright with things. He takes it as prerogative to keep his cards close to his vest. He's got a right to do that, and that's what he's going to do. So I'll be very curious to see what Smart tweets. Ultimately, are we going to be, like just blown away by his candor? Maybe, probably not. But in terms of, because when it comes to 2 o'clock on a Saturday, if it's the sun shining, I'm going to be running around chasing my kids somewhere. So in terms of rewatching the Notre Dame game, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to be doing that. But in terms of paying, attention to what Kirby Smart's tweeting, I'll probably be doing some version of that. So, Steven, that's a good question. Johnny Lester dropping some, I think he's spitting some rhymes over here on YouTube. Not too bad. Mike D also noticing the slick hair over here. Yeah, I am definitely doing that here today. Chase White said it's pomade. It's really not pomade. It's just wet. Like it's not on purpose or anything like that. It just happens to be wet because I just got out of the shower. It's one of the benefits of working from home. I'm also wearing a pair of shorts right now with no shoes, no socks. A lot of you probably doing the same thing. I saw this from one of the retailers recently that their sales of shirts had kind of gone up, but their sales of pants had kind of gone down. I am wearing, clothes below my waist. Just happens to be a pair of gym shorts and nothing else. So that's kind of what's going on there on that. Al Chandler says the NCAA is going to hold the brakes on teams getting back to practice and workouts. The one thing, though, that we have seen a little bit of a relief from, though, is the amount of time these programs, including Georgia, can be a part of the video conferencing stuff, doing work with their players, coaches talking to players. That's been expanded now. It was already instituted recently that you could have these video meetings, much the same way we're doing DawgNation Daily right now. You can have these video meetings, and it's just come out to the SECs and now expanding that even further to give the coaches a chance to work more with their players. How much of that can be done in terms of really installing something that's good for the upcoming season? I'm honestly not quite so sure. Something's probably better than nothing here, but these coaches are getting a chance to meet with their players now a little bit more because of that, which is probably a pretty good thing. Wayne Folan says, I've got a pretty good tug of war between Facebook and YouTube. I will say this, not to toot my own horn, but I feel like toggling back and forth between the various comment sections, I make that look a lot easier than it probably is. In fact, some of my DawgNation brethren, when they do their own broadcasts, I don't know if they do quite as much toggling as I do. I feel like I'm pretty good about keeping the show pretty interactive. Brad Hotton says, am I a FOP guy or a Dapper Dan man? I don't know what FOP is. Is that pomade? I don't have anything in my hair. It's just wet. I knew I was going to get grief for this. Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I knew I was going to get roasted for having the wet, slick hair, but it was like a choice of either coming on the show with no shower, which y'all have made fun of for me too, or being made fun of for having wet hair. So I decided to at least get made fun of for something different this time around. But I'm glad y'all noticed. Travis McCullough excited about the virtual G-Day. Yeah, not too bad. Matt Rukavina says, I look like a movie character. I'll take that. The problem with too much of the slick hair is, actually, one of the good things about the slick hair, and maybe this is something I ought to consider even more of, when the hair is wet, it looks a lot blacker as opposed to the gray. So from that standpoint, I might be better off with the wet hair. Might be. Let's see what else is going on over here on Facebook. Jacob O'Neill talking about his breakfast. I like that. Robert Jose says somebody was snitching on the Facebook comment section. I don't know about that. Phil Rogers says, love your show here in Jacksonville. We don't get any dog news, so I have to watch your show to get my fix. Well, Phil, I really appreciate that. I cannot wait to be down there on the First Coast on Halloween night for Georgia, Florida this upcoming year. I'm really excited about that. Really looking forward to that, and we appreciate you being a part of the show. In fact, heard some news, and I only about, I'm like some of y'all, I kind of process about 50 to 75% of what I hear. I did hear it sounds like those Jacksonville beaches may be getting ready to open back up again. So if you guys are getting ready to get back to normal over there, best of luck with that. And we're certainly looking forward to, I'm a huge fan of those beaches around the Jacksonville area. So looking forward to seeing the world get back to normal, and excited about the possibility that Jacksonville may be leading the way there. That's really nice to really think about. Raphael Shaw says I'm a little bit like Slick Rick. I'll take that as a compliment any day of the week, for sure. Matt Rukavina mentions Dan Mullen. Let me say this. Y'all tell me if this is a fair point to make. I made this on the podcast today. Y'all tell me if this is a fair point. So I saw where Tennessee is apparently in the mix for a pretty big transfer quarterback. JT Daniels is leaving USC. That's known for sure. He is in the transfer portal. This is not a graduate transfer. This is a traditional transfer. Daniels is 2 years removed, or I should say 2 years out of high school. He's been at USC for 2 years. So he's not a graduate. He's just transferring. He was injured most of last year, played some in his freshman season, played okay when he did play. He's got a relationship with former USC offensive coordinator T. Martin, who's now a staff member there at Tennessee. There is a lot of online chatter, if you will, that Daniels could be on his way to the Vols, which I think is a pretty interesting get for Tennessee. They've got Harrison Bailey already, so they're trying to build up their quarterback room. But the point that I made in the show earlier today, and tell me if you think this is fair, while Florida has gotten its share of transfers, Van Jefferson for last year's team, Lorenzo Lingard for this year's team, there is something altogether different about a five-star quarterback. That's just a different variety stripe altogether. This is the kind of big news that gets a Georgia fan's attention. Watch what Tennessee did, if they indeed do this, if they get J.D. Daniels, that'd be the kind of thing you'd really notice and pay attention to. I would suggest that Jeremy Pruitt is making noise in terms of talent acquisition at Tennessee in a way that Dan Mullen's finding it very hard to keep up with at Florida. Now, is the overall roster level higher at Florida than it is at Tennessee? For now, it is. But keep in mind, given how bad Butch Jones was as a recruiter, Jeremy Pruitt had a lot, deeper hole to kind of pull himself out of to kind of even get back to zero on that front. But, and I'll put Cade Mays in this category here for a moment. Some of the recruiting wins of guys like Wanya Morris and others. Georgia fans, I think, are forced to notice what Jeremy Pruitt's doing to the north of them, more so than they're noticing what Dan Mullen, in terms of a talent acquisition standpoint, is doing to the south. And you can just sort of do with that what you will, but definitely it's sort of eyebrow raising when you see Tennessee potentially in the mix for a guy like Daniels, who was a former 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. The way I said on the show today is this, and you can tell me if you think you agree. I don't know that Jeremy Pruitt's going to be effective enough getting a transfer from the Georgia roster, one that I think the Georgia would like to have kept, getting some recruits in some cases that Georgia was interested in, potentially bringing in the kind of quarterback that you would very much have to game plan against or who's eligible in playing. I think that Tennessee's proven it can be a nuisance, and now we'll see if they can become a nemesis. But when you think about Florida trying to close the gap with Georgia, it's also important to look just below the Gators at the other SEC East teams trying to close the gap with them. I've said before that I think that South Carolina has a chance to be a 7 or 8 win team this year after only winning 4 the previous season. That's how much I think of the Mike Bobo hire. The same thing for Tennessee as well, which won some games in the field and will now have a chance to be even more competitive here in 2020 and potentially, this is potentially because Daniels, in terms of where he's actually going to go, we don't know yet, but the potential of making some noise in the transfer market here too, that's the kind of thing that Jeremy Pruitt's doing right now that gets noticed, and I'll take some of your comments on that. I also want to talk about my friends at the UGA Alumni Association for a minute because, this would typically be the week of giving for the UGA Alumni Association. And obviously a lot's kind of changed and different. This would have been G-Day this upcoming Saturday. Many of you mentioned that before. And there is still, even in the absence of G-Day, and even with the coronavirus changing so much about the world that we're living in right now, there is still a great chance to support the UGA Alumni Association and the work that it's doing to support UGA. And in fact, there's a few ways that you can do this right now. You can financially support the Student Emergency Fund. Now, what the Student Emergency Fund does is it supports students that kind of find themselves in harm's way for whatever may be going on during the year. But obviously, during this particular time in our lives, you can kind of certainly understand how a student might find him or herself in jeopardy. The Student Emergency Fund sort of helps support that, including people dealing with COVID-19. You can also support the researchers at UGA. The scientists there at UGA doing really important work as we seek a vaccine for the coronavirus, COVID-19, and your financial support helps make that more possible. You can't do research without money, and the UGA Alumni Association is helping facilitate some of those donations. You can also be a mentor. For a lot of folks, when academic life kind of returns to normal, they're going to kind of find themselves in kind of a weird spot of, how are they towards progressing towards their degree and how are they towards progressing towards their life after college. Being a mentor gives you a chance to do that. And you can also share some of your stories for how the disease has personally impacted you there as well. So let me give you a website you can go to here. I'm going to say this a couple of times. You should be able to see this on your screen too. It's alumni.uga.edu/COVID-19. Obviously a lot easier to see just on your screen, but alumni.uga.edu/COVID-19. So many of you that watch the show every day are UGA grads. You're proud of your degree. You're proud of your connection to the University of Georgia. And the best way to show off that pride is to be a part of DawgNation here, supporting the work that the university is doing right now, supporting the students who are on campus who are benefiting from that work, and supporting the research that has the potential to make the world a better place in the future. Please check out the website on your screen and support our friends at the UGA Alumni Association as the university kind of leads the way in battling COVID-19. With that in mind, we'll get into more of your comments here. I was on Facebook here. Let me pop over here and see some more YouTube comments here for a moment as I continue to touch my face and set a very bad example, but nonetheless. Football fan says Newman's an ACC quarterback and he won't handle SEC defenses. Now, I read that comment not to troll you or sort of bring to mind a topic that makes UJ fans mad, but I do think this is an important point to kind of push back against. If Jamie Newman's football career as a collegiate had ended with just his Wake Forest work, there are plenty of things on the internet, and you don't have to take my word for this. You can search for yourself. CBS.com, other places have written about this. That Jamie Newman would have been a draft prospect had he left school right now. In fact, there was Daniel Trapeso from CBS.com that thought that Newman could have been a second-round pick had he gone out of this year's draft. So I think a lot of people assume that Jamie Newman is hyped because he went to Georgia. But the truth is, there's a lot of hype on the internet for Newman that predated his time of choosing UGA. I mentioned the CBSSports.com article, Pro Football Focus. The numbers it had on Newman have been cited numerous times. Does anybody know how Pro Football Focus gets its stuff? Probably not. Showing their work, not something that they're necessarily famous for. But nonetheless, that's a level of hype that existed for Newman before he came to Georgia. Now, you want to say that Newman did only what he did against ACC defenses. That's fine. You can say that if you want to. The truth is, Newman had some very good moments in a Wake Forest uniform, had some not so good moments in a Wake Forest uniform. Makes it difficult to project exactly how he'll do at Georgia. But as I've said before, for someone who wants the best for Georgia, I obviously cheer for them. For someone who views Jamie Newman as a potential missing piece of the Georgia offense, the thing that I need from Newman, I'm speaking as a fan here, I'm not speaking as an analyst or somebody like that, just as a fan. What I need from Newman is, I talked on the show earlier this week about the possibilities of the next Joe Burrow. The honest truth is, Georgia can win the national championship without Jamie Newman being Heisman finalist level Joe Burrow, without being, what Trevor Lawrence is or what other top quarterbacks are in college football. You don't need a great quarterback in college football to have a great team. You just need a good performance from him. I think that Newman, at the very least, what he does with his legs, the arm strength, the maturity, because he's now graduated from college, he has the raw materials that I think makes success possible. And of all the things that I just mentioned, don't discount the role that maturity plays in all of this. Joe Burrow showed you last year that being a senior, being a guy who had been around for a while, that matters. The truth is, before that, young quarterbacks had been very much in vogue. Redshirt freshmen winning the Heisman Trophy, which we saw a few years ago. Young freshmen leading their team into national championship games, which Jake Fromm did, or coming in to help win a national championship, which unfortunately Tua Tagovailoa did. Young quarterbacks had been all the rage in college football. But last year, Burrow kind of swung the door back in the direction of experience again. And now Jamie Newman steps in with that sort of same level of experience and that sort of same opportunity to kind of use what he's learned. Some good games, not good games, some lesser talent, trying to make the most out of what he had around him at times, whatever you want to say here. Pretty good offensive scheme overall, I think, for Dave Clawson there at Wake Forest. But nonetheless, just kind of trying to build himself and using all that to his advantage. I think that Georgia's got a really good shot to do some nice things with Newman, I guess, is the point that I'm kind of getting to here. Let's get a few more YouTube comments. Green Soldier feeling pretty good about those Georgia running backs, mentioning Kenny McIntosh and James Cook and Kendall Milton. Yeah, boy, exciting about that. New Jack says championships are not won hypothetically. No, they're not. But also, I mean, you would grant me this, New Jack, that there's no definitive statement you can make really about anything right now. About the only definitive statement you can make for the moment is, a team like Clemson, because it brings back so much. If you tell me relative to the competition it's facing, the safest bet in college football, I'll give you Clemson. That's a non-hypothetical discussion. We know what Trevor Lawrence looks like. We know what Travis Etienne looks like. We know what Justin Ross, T. Higgins, or I guess T. Higgins leaving. We know what Justin Ross looks like. Like, we know what these guys look like. So we have defensively much the same way with the KJ Henrys and the guys on defense. We just sort of know what that group looks like, right? So that's not a hypothetical conversation. But in the SEC, almost every projection you would have for any team in the preseason, almost all of that's going to be hypothetical here at the moment. Because at Alabama, is it going to be Mac Jones? Is it going to be the transfer quarterback? Or not transfer, the incoming freshman. Bryce Young. There are so many uncertainties about what Alabama's going to be doing at quarterback. What does Najee Harris look like returning from injury? How much does Dylan Moses' return from injury impact an Alabama defense? It was pretty deficient a year ago. Florida trying to rebuild its running game. That has not really blossomed under Dan Mullen. That right now, how good will that be with an offensive line that's now a year older? That's a pretty significant hypothetical. Auburn offensively returns its quarterback, but having to rebuild its running game. Bringing in some of the younger players. Getting Tank Bigsby and some of those guys more involved in the offense. That's a hypothetical about how that transformation is going to go. The impact that Chad Morris has as offensive coordinator there is probably a bit of a hypothetical. To say nothing of the defense now without Derek Brown as the tip of the spear in the middle of that defense. That's a hypothetical. LSU minus Joe Brady, Joe Burrow. What do the Tigers look like in Baton Rouge? That's also a hypothetical. So in terms of Georgia and trying to imagine what it might look like, in the SEC, the conversation around Georgia and the possibilities and the maybes, Georgia doesn't actually have all that much of a longer list of those than other teams around the SEC do right now. Let's get a few more comments, and we'll go back to Facebook here in a moment. GB on the subject of Zamir White to say that coming back from 2 ACLs is indeed remarkable. And now we'll get to see Zamir White another year removed from that injury. And it reminds me, obviously, now this is a lot to live up to, but Zamir White was the nation's former number 1 running back coming out of high school. But for Zamir now, he's another year removed, a little bit like Nick Chubb would have been in 2017. Chubb had some nice moments in 2016, but clearly wasn't the same player in 2016 that he had been in his freshman season of 2014, or that I think that he eventually became again in 2017. Does a similar level of improvement happen for White this year? It is fair to say that when Smart was on the Atlanta radio station this week, he certainly cited White and cited James Cook as his potential playmakers, the same way that he said at the end of last season that he had a lot of comfort and confidence in those guys, even though we as fans and media mostly didn't see them on the field a lot last season, at least in terms of a sort of a featured role within the Georgia offense. So the best of Zamir White, we may very well get a chance to see that in 2020. That's just among the many reasons why I'm excited about the upcoming year. I think that's a really point. Let me give a shout out to my friends at Kroger for this. There's a website you can go to. A lot of you are cooking a lot more right now than you've ever cooked before. And frankly, there's only so many things you can cook, right? Sometimes you just sort of get bored with the stuff that you're eating. Well, if you need some meal inspiration, go to this website. It's Kroger.com/recipes. You can get some easy meals, some videos, step-by-step instructions about how you can kind of take your cooking to the next level, really make your family or whoever you're cooking for enjoy it a lot more. The website, Kroger.com/recipes for a lot more on that. More Facebook comments here. We are going to get off the air a little early today to get ready for Jake Fromm, Andrew Thomas coming up here live on the DawgNation video channels, 11:30 a.m. So I'm really excited about that. Eric DeVornsey Sr. says, any chance we get a commitment during the virtual G-Day? Obviously, that's been kind of a big thing for Georgia before. One thing we do know, Eric, is on Sunday, Elijah Judy, the 4-star edge rusher out of Philadelphia, is going to make his announcement at 4 p.m. And based on what Jeff Santel wrote about Judy and what Judy told Jeff going back to last month, I would say that UGA fans ought to be tuned in pretty closely for what Judy says coming up Sunday at 4. Worth kind of thinking about there. Philip Jordan Wells says I look like one of the Soggy Bottom Boys. Is that the "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" reference? Pretty funny stuff. Wayne Folan wants to have an actual tug of war between the Facebook and the YouTube, kind of get a battle of the comment sections going. That wouldn't be too bad to see. Bubby Dean, who, by the way, I think makes appearance on both sides of the comment section, says that Kirby can be a lot more candid with comments about the offense because this year we have a whole new staff. That's interesting, Bubby. You may be right about that. He may be willing to say that. But one of the things I talked about in the podcast yesterday, and I realize not everybody agrees with me on this. I'm not trying to stir people up, but I wish that Smart would be more, candid about the role in which the coaching change is going to bring about a new look to the offense. What I thought we've heard from Smart lately is pretty similar to the same stuff we were hearing from Georgia a year ago. That doesn't mean the offense looks the same still, but I guess what I'm saying is, Bubby, who obviously follows the program closely, I just wish he was right. I just wish that, I hope he's right. I hope that Smart comes out and says, hey, here's what we're going to do this year that's going to be totally different, not to give the store away and give the game plan away, but just acknowledge the fact that Georgia needs more explosive plays, and to a degree, it's going to be coaching that's responsible for getting that done. Justin Hodges, thanks for the kind words. Hugh Nash says that if the Facebookers and the YouTubers did get together in a competition, that the Facebookers would destroy them with their teamwork. I hate to say this to the YouTube folks, but I believe that Hugh's probably right about this. that if there was any kind of cooperation required whatsoever, the Facebook folks are sort of famous for cooperating with each other. The YouTube folks are kind of famous for the opposite. So from that standpoint, if we did have a tug of war, it'd start off with everybody trying to win for their team, and 5 seconds later, much like a heel tag team in wrestling, one guy would just sort of turn on the other, and the YouTube side, they'd end up fighting with themselves while the Facebook folks stood around and watch. James Crump says that JT Daniels to Tennessee would be huge. I think it would be, certainly. Robert Barnes on the subject of what the government's kind of doing in terms of relaxing some restrictions. I'll be honest with you, Robert, I'm not quite sure where all that stands yet. But I think that for the people that you've heard a lot of like these sort of like wild out there scenarios involving college football of, well, maybe you play the season in the spring, or maybe you play in the fall, but there are no fans, or maybe you do the blah, 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 the blah, blah, blah. I think the one thing to keep in mind on all that is all of that is sort of based on the situation as it's understood right now. But the one thing I don't think gets enough attention is how much within the world of COVID-19, how much the news cycle changes quickly, rapidly, almost in some cases going 180 degrees the opposite in terms of consensus opinion. There's no better example of this when it comes to masks. At one point in time, there were plenty of experts being quoted by heritage media outlets that were saying that there was no value whatsoever in wearing masks. And now in many places, it's illegal not to wear them. So that's just one example of how quickly some things have changed over the course of our society's battle with the disease. And so when it comes to college football folks saying, well, I think this is what the fall is going to look like, or this is what the football season is going to look like, they are making that opinion on the basis of how we understand things right now. But how we understand things will change very quickly, maybe within even a few days. That's just how fast the news cycle has spun during all of this coronavirus stuff. All right, a couple more comments. We're going to roll into our R.S. Andrews cool down here. I want to remind you, air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric, R.S. Andrews can kind of do all those things. That means if your water heater goes out, in many cases, R.S. Andrews can replace that for you in the very same day. My hair's so wet and slick right now. The reason why that's the case is because I stood in the shower and had that hot water come flowing down on me today. And boy, even though I wanted to come talk to all you, I didn't want to get into that shower because I love that hot shower in the morning. If you don't have enough hot water, well, the water heater may be the problem. R.S. Andrews is the one to call. Reach out to them online at rsandrews.com for our R.S. Andrews cool down. All right, a couple more comments. We will get ready to get going and be back here at 11:30 with Jake Fromm and Andrew Thomas. Randy Hall says, when it comes to the Soggy Bottom Boys, that's a comparison to George Clooney. Not such a bad one. I'll take that for sure. I'll take the Clooney comparison, absolutely. Keith Volt says the worst thing that Kirby could do is start spouting off about the big changes. I understand where you're kind of coming from on that. I'm not asking him to give the store away, and you have every right to disagree with what I'm saying. When I said on the podcast yesterday, I said knowing some people will disagree with it, but when Smart, kind of talk about the playmakers determining how different the offense is, hard not to make the comparison to what James Coley said before the start of last year about how ultimately the offense was about players, not plays. And for me, I just think it's important to acknowledge, even if Smart doesn't want to say this right now, hopefully we'll see it with our own eyes in the field, will be an acknowledgement of this, that upgrades in offense are ultimately at the college level determined by the coaches. LSU is the perfect example of this. Same quarterback in 2018 compared to 2019. Same running back. Same collection of wide receivers. Results completely different. And that didn't happen just because those guys got a year older. Joe Brady came in and absolutely became the straw that stirred the drink for that offense. It's too much probably to ask Todd Monken to have a similar statistical impact on Georgia, but the blueprint's the same. Joe Brady transformed the LSU offense. If the Georgia offense is going to be transformed, I believe it will be transformed by a better scheme that works to get receivers, backs, quarterbacks into more favorable positions to succeed. Not everybody will agree with that, I understand, but that's certainly the take that I have. A couple more here, and we will get ready to roll after this. Stephen Venanzi says, is Jake Fromm going to be on the show later today? Yeah, we're doing a new show. Or not a new show, but we're going to do a broadcast 11:30 a.m. Jake and Andrew Thomas both going to be a part of that. I'm really excited about that. Really excited about that. By the way, Green Soldier says, if we're going to do the tug of war, he says, I've got a few friends, some Marines, some Seabees, some current soldiers who would love to play a game like that. That's a good point. Our buddy Green Soldier can bring in some ringers from his service time. So that's a very important thing to think about when you start talking about battles of the comment sections. And I know those guys will work together. That's a pretty good point there on that. Johnny Lester says, thank God that Derek Brown is gone. Yeah, that's one of those guys that I am certainly glad to see Georgia not having to line up against in the future. I think that's a really good point all the way around. So as we said, we're going to get ready for Jake Fromm and Andrew Thomas. That means we're going to get ready to roll off here right now. We certainly appreciate you being a part of everything that we're doing here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. We also hope you'll check out the AJC for Atlanta News Now. Stay up to date on the coronavirus. Stay up to date on how it's impacting our state. Also, keep track of some really fun things going on in the sports world. Some good stuff from Steve Hummer and everything else. You can find all of that online at ajc.com and continue to access the AJC e-paper. The same information that AJC subscribers get, you can get that for free right now when you go to ajc.com or the link at the top of the page at DawgNation.com. Hope you will check all of that out. Let me also remind you, as our buddy Eddie would want to, it's now been 1,266 days. Let me make sure he gets a good, nice shot here. 1,266 days since those lousy stinking Gators beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, that is good news. It's our Gator Hater Updater. Thanks for being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Check out the podcast later on today. Check out the interview with Jake Fromm and Andrew Thomas coming up in about 45 minutes time. For those of you watching live, it's 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And we'll see you back here again on Monday for DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Y'all make it a great weekend.